Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hello, everybody. This is Sean Martin. You're very welcome to a new episode of Redefining CyberSecurity here on ITSPmagazine Podcast Network. And as you know from listening to the show, I try to figure out how to operationalize security, which seems to become more difficult every day. And I'm not sure how CISOs do it and the practitioners stay above water, but somehow they do for the most part. And when they figure that out, I feel it's important to give back some of that knowledge to the community. And to be honest, there isn't anybody that I can think of that does more of that than my guest today, Gary Hayslip. Gary, good to have you on.
Well, thank you. It's been a while, and I'm really happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to see you again, my friend, and glad you're well. And today we're going to talk about thought leadership and kind of sharing our learnings with others and the value of that, both personally and to the community. And as I was alluding to, it's an important part of our process, right? Continuous learning and applying those learnings to our own situations and our own programs. For those who haven't met you yet, Gary, maybe a few words about some of the things you've done. San Diego, prior to San Diego, up to your role at SoftBank now. Just kind of set the stage for folks of who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, I said I've been in cyber and IT for years. I don't like to go ahead and say the date because then I'm like, whoa, it's actually been that quite long. It's just I did a whole tour, active duty military. Retired from, I was with the U.S. Navy, retired from the Navy, worked for the federal government for a number of years, as a CISO for the U.S. Navy. And then, was the first CISO for the city of San Diego, and which was really interesting. Massive city, smart city projects. I think that's where I met you, Sean, for the first time when I was there. And then I decided to go ahead and do something different and jump in the private industry. And so for a number of years, I was the CISO for WebRoot software. And so that gave me a chance to see what it was like to work with sales and marketing and the product teams and still run cybersecurity and do, IT as well. And then, the company got acquired, so first time to actually see what it was like to get acquired and go through the acquisition and, and to help with all of that. And as that wrapped up, SoftBank, the Vision Fund, was picking up steam. And they were growing exponentially from 50 people to 500 people in less than 12 months, and they needed a CISO, and the new CIO that they had hired was looking for somebody like me that could do 4 or 5 different types of jobs, and somebody that wasn't afraid to get involved with startups and work with audit and build a security team. And he had a whole really interesting idea of going 100% SaaS. Nothing on-prem, and I was intrigued to how I would build a security stack for that and be able to manage the risk. And that was about 4.5 years ago. It's been a fun ride. It's been really, really interesting.
Man, I think that's probably a story unto itself. That whole journey, because what it looks like today certainly doesn't look like what it did 4.5 years ago.
Yeah, and then
in terms of what was possible. So yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, and then as you mentioned, in our community. I've helped co-author several books, the CISO Desk Reference Guide series, and then I've written, cybersecurity books for small businesses, and we wrote an executive primer that's actually for like the CEO and the CFO to kind of help them explain to them, hey, this is how you work with a security team, and this is what a CISO does, and stuff, and then on LinkedIn I've published probably about 120 articles of different things on how to do stuff, and it's just really big and creating content and figuring out ways to help people.
Yeah, I love it. You're an inspiration, Gary, and very, very prolific, and certainly a nugget for everyone to chew on, depending on for every role I can imagine, and every position and level. So let's I guess your books, are those an inspiration? Well, how do the books fit into thought leadership for you?
Yeah.
Let's tackle that first.
I mean, the story, how we got started was, it's kind of funny because I joke about, over fish tacos and beer, you come up with great ideas, like here in San Diego. And honestly, that's how it happened. I mean, I met with my two co-authors. We were at a startup event. There's a large cybersecurity community here in San Diego, a lot of startups. And so we're at a startup event. And at that time, I was writing cybersecurity articles explaining how to do different things and how to be a CISO and stuff. And it was for veterans. I was working for fellow veterans and trying to help many of them transition and come into the cybersecurity field. And it just happened to be Matt Stamper was like, "Why don't you write a book?" And I was like, "No, that's too much work. I don't want to write a book." And then Bill Bonnie was like, "Well, why don't we write a book?" And it was just kind of the three of us over some great fish tacos were like, "Hey, that's," and we started kicking the idea around because we all wanted to do something, to be able to not just give back to the community, but we were intrigued at the whole process of how you would actually write and what you would do, because we've got friends of ours that have written books, and so we were intrigued, and we decided to take it to the next level. Not only did we decide to write a book, we actually stood up a publishing house on the Kindle desktop platform, and actually went through the whole thing with lawyers, and and it was, I have to admit, it was cool. Now we're actually publishing other authors besides ourselves, and we've got quite a lot of books now that are published in the what we call the CISO DRG publishing, or CISO desktop publishing. But from a thought leadership perspective, what I find intriguing about it now is we've been writing books since 2015, and the books pop up all over the place. We've had it in multiple languages and roughly about 35 different countries now, where the books are being published. And I get people from all over the world who come up to me at Black Hat or RSA at different conferences, and they shake my hand or they talk to me, and they've used my book to help them for the new job that they've got, or they use one of our books to prep them for some big projects that they were doing, or reporting to the board for the first time, or hey, they were looking at doing cyber insurance, and we had a whole chapter on breaking down all the different things that you need to know. And they were like, I actually got a chance to work with legal and audit while we were looking at cyber insurance, and I understood what they were talking about and could actually provide information to them. And that's what we wrote it for. Is we were like, we wanted to go ahead and start with something that we thought people would use, practitioners would use. And what's been interesting is that it's the print and ebook version, and we find people buy both, and we never could figure out why. And once somebody explained to me, they're like, "Yeah, I buy the print version because I like to take notes and I keep it with me. It's on the bookshelf. But then I buy the ebook version because I have that on my iPad. So when I'm on travel and I need to look up something, I pull it out and I look it up." And yeah, it's been really cool. I mean, just the people I've met just from writing the books has been probably one of the best things I could have ever done professionally.
I love it. If my memory serves me, which it very rarely does, I think it was Helen Patton, who I'm sure you know.
Yep.
I believe she wrote a book, and she said the book was a way to scale sharing some of the knowledge and experience that she's had. It's one thing to get on stage and have a talk and connect with a certain group of people, but if you can get a book out there and in the hands of people not in the role yet, smack dab in the middle of the role, looking to move on and train the next generation on that role, it's a great way to kind of scale that and connect with a larger group. And so, huge congrats to you and the crew for the publications and the platform and everything you're doing there. I presume the articles you write are on your own, which are different than the collaborative nature of writing one or more of the books. Does that process change how you approach what you're sharing. Obviously, an article is
Yeah.
a smaller bite-sized piece compared to a book, but how does working solo compare to working in a group?
It's, well, like when we work in a group, in a team, and we're writing a book and it's a project, it's interesting because we mind map out the chapters. We'll mind map out the chapters. We know what subject each chapter is going to be. We know what questions we're trying to answer to each chapter. And then we hold each other accountable. And then we got a process that we follow as we work on each chapter, and we go through it and we check back and forth with each other, every couple of weeks, progress wise. And my whole methodology, like when I'm into it and I'm writing a book, I typically write an hour a day. I'll have it mind mapped out. I'll have pulled my research together. I'll already pretty much have a skeleton way of already jotted down kind of how the chapter is going to flow the way I'm thinking of it. But I'm very disciplined that I only do an hour a day. And the reason is that, if you just write and write and write every day, you burn yourself out. And you get to the point to where you hate doing it and you'll start procrastinating and you never get done. But if you just hold yourself for an hour, and so I usually do my first 10 to 15 minutes of reading what I wrote, before the night before, and then I may write some more, and then I'll find a good stopping point, and then I'm done. And so it's very disciplined like that. Articles, on the other hand, when I'm writing an article and it's just me, it's interesting because one of the articles I just recently published on LinkedIn was about developing your thought leadership, and I talk about my process. I basically built out this matrix, kind of like a spreadsheet, where I track just ideas, ideas and things that I know very well, or things that I think would be really interesting to write about, and and I put all these ideas together, and then I actually carry that list, on my various laptops and on my phone with me, and I'm constantly adding to it or taking things off of it, and and it helps remind me of stuff that I want to write about. And then when I decide to go ahead and select something on that list, I set up a folder. I'll start collecting articles and different things to kind of just to refresh my memory on it, and also kind of help develop the way I'm looking at it, because you have a voice, you have a way that you talk about things. And I typically don't talk at the executive 30,000 foot level. I'm usually at the below 10,000 foot. I'm usually at the practitioner level. I'm very technical, but also strategic. I can talk about, working with the board and working with peers and the other business units and doing strategy, or I could talk about, okay, this is, about setting up a firewall and doing protocols and, and going through logs and looking for, doing threat intelligence.
Talk to me about the matrix, because I keep, like, I just started. I've written tons of stuff.
Yeah.
Publications for vendors, white paper, you name it.
And what you basically do is, I made the matrix. I made this list, and then you grade it. So each entry that you put in there,
just a list though, or are there columns of attributes that you also?
There's like columns, and each column is like a different level. Like if it's a level 1, it's something that I'm kind of interested in. I'm not comfortable with it yet because I don't know enough, and I need to do some more research. If I grade it 1 through 5. If it's a 5, if I grade it as a 5, and I'm filling in column number 5, I can speak about it for hours. I'm very comfortable with the subject. I don't mind doing a keynote on it, or going ahead and writing an article, or helping, you know what I'm saying? So it's 1 through there, 1 through 5. And then what I do is, and 3 being kind of in the middle, where I know enough about it, I can speak intelligently about it. I know some research that I can pull down for it real quick, but I probably need to update myself on it just because of what's current. So anything that's 3 to 5 range, after I've gone ahead and I've go through my whole list and I grade it, and the grades will change over time. But anything that's between 3 to 5 is what I focus on. So I may have the full list, and then the next tab is the 3 to 5. And then from the 3 to 5, I go ahead and a lot of times I'll low hanging fruit, I'll look at the 5s that I can quickly go ahead and talk about, and that I've got research on, or that I know is current, and I know friends like Chris Roberts and people or Alan Alford, people that are doing stuff already. I can just talk to them real quick, and I'll write, and I'll go ahead and I'll talk about it. But you kind of build this matrix, and the big thing is that you're continually looking at it, and then I carry an app on my phone where I'll take notes, or I'll take different ideas that'll come up in my head, that I'll add to the list. Or there'll be times where I'm like, hey, this subject was pretty cool, but it's been superseded by other things, and I don't think I could really do well talking about that, and I'll remove it from the list. But what it does is it builds you a place where you can kind of concentrate your thoughts, and so you can think about which things do you feel you would be comfortable writing and speaking about. And then with that, you can start doing research, you can start collecting things, and start putting together, an article, or, start putting together a slide deck or a speech.
Yeah. Does it have to be, so level of comfort for sure, level of interest for sure. Does it have to bubble up to the level of passion, or can something else draw it from the list and say, this is just such a hot topic, or I've heard this 10 times in the last 5 meetings. I need to write about this now, even though I'm not really passionate, but it's an important piece.
I actually will flag those that I'm passionate about, because I find sometimes you can be very passionate talking about something, and people will overlook the fact that you don't know enough. But which is kind of funny.
I think that's all of my stuff.
But I mean, I do think you have to have some level of passion. Just talking about something because everybody else is talking about it, you're just squawking. You got to do something that you like, that you enjoy, that you know what I'm saying, that's part of you. I mean, for me, when I write and I create something and I'm putting it in the community, I'm doing it because I like doing this and I want to help. Rick McElroy and I had I think the last time we actually all got together was in 2019 at RSA, when we did that whole speech about why the CISO role sucked and what you needed to do to fix it and stuff like that. But one of the things that we had talked about was leaving a legacy of writing and speaking and doing things with a passion, with a purpose, for the community, that go ahead and bring people up, that go ahead and help it grow. And I mean, you could do stuff without a passion, but why? I mean, life is so short. I'd rather do it because it's something I love doing, and there's a purpose behind it.
And I feel that the other side of the coin, the recipient of the outcomes of that work, benefit better. I think they'll recognize and feel that you lived through something, or you experienced something, or you have a particular position or view on something that really comes through, that they can then resonate with. Right?
Yeah. And I think that's the big thing, is that when you write something, you really want them to be able to have the context of how it fits within their story, within the path that they're on, so that they can, be better and do something with it and help them, and it's something that really drives me.
So let's talk a bit about that. So finding a way to actually express, so taking it from the list and expressing your views in a way that fulfills your desire to share, but then also fulfills the recipient's or the reader's desire to learn. Talk us through that.
Well, I mean, and some of the things I talk about is, you create your matrix or your list, you go ahead and you grade it, you balance out those areas that you think you're going to be good, that you feel comfortable with writing or speaking about. Now, to speak, if you've never really gone ahead and been in front of people and talked with people and stuff like that, what I recommend, honestly, for me starting out was, I did a lot of stuff for ISSA and ISACA and a lot of the local, chapters, in my area. A lot of the people, you're comfortable with them. You can talk about a subject. You can test out, a PowerPoint, or, basically you can test out a slide deck and a speech that, a subject that you want to talk about, and take their feedback and everything. And once you're comfortable, make the tweak, make the adjustments, and then try to move up. and go to, maybe you're going to do B-sides, or maybe you want to apply for Black Hat or RSA, or there's so many different conferences now that you can go ahead and apply for. So I, typically talk about keeping it small, keeping local chapters first, kind of developing your style, developing your slide deck, developing your topic, feel comfortable with it, and then start applying for different conferences to go ahead and get a chance to talk. And you'd be surprised, there's a lot of times they're looking for people, who are unknown or who are coming in with, new topics. And, so that was the way I did it. Was I kind of started that way, and then I grew into that. And I found it was very effective. And I've now spoken to a group of like 10 people, and I've been in, Beijing talking to a room of 10,000, and they were streaming it to another 2 million. So I've had all kinds of stuff. So I mean, it just depends. On the writing side, I think on the writing side, you've got so many different options now, because I mean, you can write about something and just publish it on LinkedIn and just ask for feedback, and make sure to share it within the groups that you're in and stuff like that, and just ask for feedback. You can decide to just go ahead and set up your own page up on Medium, or, a lot of, blog sites like that, and just start, posting there, and reach out to your friends, say, hey, read this, let me know what you think, can you share it? I've done both of those. I've used both platforms. There's people that like to go ahead and write stuff, and then they share it on Twitter or X or whatever the hell Elon's calling it today, or they go ahead and they get in the podcast like yourself. The number of cyber podcasts, I think, is like increased 300% over the last 5 years. Just people want to be able to talk about, different subjects. My thing is that there's so many different mediums out there that are available now. You can start with something small and then go ahead and jump from that. I mean, I started writing and started publishing it, on LinkedIn, and started putting it up on Medium, and then I've started publishing on Forbes, and and I've submitted stuff to the Wall Street Journal and to other magazines and stuff like that as well. So I mean, you start small, you start growing, you ask for feedback, you adjust, and again, that passion, that knowledge, you keep educating yourself, and that's another thing I explain to people, is that once you create your matrix and you got your subjects and you're starting to write and starting to speak about it, it's a continuous process. It's a continuous process of adding things to it. It's a continuous process of educating yourself on those that you were speaking about and creating content on. It's a continuous process of looking for places and platforms to share, to grow your audience, to grow, people that follow you, to just, for me to go ahead and, push it out there and help people. And what you'll find is a lot of people will just set up their own personal website and put links to all of their stuff, or they may go ahead and use something like Medium or one of these other different, sites as their core area where they post everything, and then they just share off of that site to LinkedIn, or they share off of that site to Facebook or Twitter, or wherever they're sharing to. Yeah. But that's and that's the way I kind of look at it. Is you start small, start with your community, the core group of people that you work with, that you associate with, that you're you go to conferences, you do things with. Have them read your content, take their feedback, and then adjust accordingly.
So, thought leadership has the word leader in it. I'm going to say a few things here, so follow me. I like to do this. To be a thought leader doesn't mean you have to be a leader. You don't have to be in an executive level role or even leading a team. It can be that you're aware of certain things and passionate about certain things, and you want to share your thoughts on them.
Yeah.
Or even just share that you might have unanswered questions about a topic and you're seeking advice. So I guess the first point I want to make, and I want to get your thoughts on all this as I string them together, is the idea of what is a thought leader. And then in your LinkedIn article, which was the inspiration for this chat, by the way, you talk about qualities of thought leadership. So maybe if you can kind of connect those two, what does one need to be? What qualities do they or should they possess to begin sharing thought leadership in whatever form? I think we spend a lot of time on writing, but it could be a presentation, it could be a webinar, it could be a speech at a conference, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I need to look up my article now just to remember what I wrote. I guess for me,
Well, funny, it says passionate as I relook at it myself.
And the thing is that I don't really look at it as leadership, as more mentorship, really is what it is. Because there are people that use this and they turn this into a different career, and they turn this into, hey, I'm going to quit being a CISO and instead I'm going to do this. And I have a passion for this. And I like helping people, and they turn it into their second job. And I don't, if people are able to do that, I don't have a problem with that, because they're helping the community, and they're doing something that they love, and they're not hurting anybody. I mean, I think it's really cool that people who've been able to do that. I still like being a practitioner and working in the community and working with my teams and stuff. But I look at the fact that it's thought leadership is more like thought mentorship in a way, or subject mentorship, or kind of like a servant leader or a mentor. And some of the qualities I look at is like I said, was that one of the things I talk about is you need to have a passion about the subject, and you need to have humility, because you're never really going to know everything, and there are times when you're going to make mistakes. There are times where other people are going to have opposing opinions, and you can still learn from it. I've had times before where I've had people, when I ask, when they comment and they respond to my my articles and my content that I have on LinkedIn and everything, I'll tell them, I beg to differ. I look at it this way. I get which way you're coming from, and but I still look at it this way, and I honestly think that, and what I'm saying, but you have to be humble, be willing to listen to other people, and learn, and continuously learn and grow as a person. So even if you are like myself, I'm hitting 200,000 followers on LinkedIn. To me, that is a blessing. It's been amazing, the people that I've met and how this has happened, over the last 15 years. And there isn't a day that I don't think that, I'm blessed to have that, and that people, read my content, and I mentor and I talk with people out of the blue, and, and I help startups, and I work with companies, and I serve on boards, and everything. And much of that is tied into writing and speaking and being active in the community, and so for me, the thought leadership piece, I guess, is that, don't look at it as, I'm going to go ahead and be this, and people are going to listen to me. No, think about it as, I've got something to talk about. I like this subject really well, and I think the content or what I'm able to put together is going to help people, or it's going to provide more input, to the subject within our community to help the community as a whole. And that's really what it should be. And now if you, get hired into a new job because of, the thought mentorship that you put together, more power to you. Awesome. If it turns into another new revenue stream, and your husband and wife are stoked that you're bringing in extra money, hey, more power to you. I'm not barking about that at all. My thing though is that you should be, again, to me, it's a mentorship thing. How are you making the community better? How are you helping people? And hopefully in the process, you are also helping yourself.
Yeah, and I was just going to make that point. For me, it's often I'm also learning in the process of putting my own thoughts together, either to your point, going off and researching something I wasn't quite familiar with or didn't know enough about. And even more importantly, if somebody does engage and shares their own thoughts on what you wrote or what you shared, different perspective, different detail, different fact, perhaps even, it's all a circle of benefit. And I wanted to talk to you a bit about kind of the concept of broad strokes versus specialization. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's another point you make in your article. Do you have any thoughts on, maybe it's just driven by different people and what they're trying to accomplish, but is it better to specialize or better to have a broad stroke, master of all trades, jack of all trades, master of none? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, and it's, and obviously I'm speaking about cyber, perspective. I'm not speaking about, other things. I find that it's good to be specialized starting out, because those are core things that you probably know really well that can get you started. You learn your voice, you learn the process, you start meeting people, and you start growing, within the community, and then you can broaden out, and talk about, more things. If you start out, with a very wide, and cyber is freaking huge, from a domain perspective, and all the different things that are inside cyber and that are being added to cyber, today, it's almost impossible starting out to write about all the stuff in cyber. In fact, it's quite overwhelming. And I've had people tell me that. And I told them, I said, hey, just narrow the aperture. Focus on something right now in front of you that that you currently do right now, that you could talk to your husband or your wife or your kids about, and you feel comfortable about it. Focus on that and just grow with that, and then get comfortable with that, grow with that, and then add something else and add something else. And before you know it, you've got quite a large group of subjects and things that you're talking about, and you're building a following and you're building, content. But, it's okay to start small. And I explain that to people, not just in cyber. I mean, maybe you're talking about IT, or maybe you're talking about robotics or stuff like that. It's good to go ahead and start small and get your feet wet and get started, and kind of develop, and you may get into it and realize, I really like talking about this over here. I'm going to go talk about gaming. I'm all into, I play DayZ and World of Warcraft and blah, blah, blah. I want to go talk about that, and then maybe I'll, every once in a while I'll talk about security or, factor something else in there. But, I want to talk about gaming. You start in one area, gets, kind of small, build it up, get comfortable with it. And then you start thinking, with that matrix that you've built, what else do I want to add? What else do I want to add? Is the way I kind of look at it.
I was actually going to ask if you had any advice for people getting started. Do you remember what your first share was? Was it written? Was it at a small conference? Do you remember?
It was actually written, and the article was, "So You Want to Be a CISO?" And it was actually a joke, talking with Rick Howard and a bunch of people, and it was like, and it was kind of a joke. We got to talking, and this was back in 2012, 2013 timeframe. And basically what it comes down to is, some people were talking about the CISO role. It was starting to pop up more. More people were, getting involved in it, and there was chatter that was going on about it. RSA was just starting to talk about it. And so I wrote this article about, so you want to be a CISO. I broke it down into 5 domains and kind of walked you through, if you're accepting your first CISO job, here's how to do it. And here's, kind of the 5 domains or core areas you need to think about. I built a whole mind map on it and kind of broke it down. That got me invited to RSA to share a stage with Rick and a couple people. And we presented, and there was probably like 3,000 or 4,000 people in the room, and it was fun. I mean, and that's where I got bit by the bug, and I was like, whoa, this is cool, and, but that was the first one, and honestly, and that article, when I first wrote it, it was actually for the Department of Defense. It was for, people in the military and people that were, transitioning and coming into the civilian community. And I was talking about the CISO role. And, and I basically broadened, again, started small, and I started broadening and started looking at private industry. And then I took that article down, and each of those 5 subjects became a whole separate article in itself, where I explored that section of the mind map and broke through all the different things. And then that article eventually became the 30, 60, 90-day plan, which is another article that I got a set of mind maps for. But it was, that's what I'm saying, is that, but that was the first one. And it was something that I knew very well. I was in my 3rd role as a CISO. I could speak about it. I'd been already, and I'd been a CIO twice as well. And so I, walked through what it's like to go ahead and get started in something I could easily speak about in my sleep. I kept it small, just focused on that area, and then later branched out.
I love it. Well, I've written a ton for SCmagazine and Dark Reading and CIO, CSO magazines in the past, looking at market trends and tech trends and all kinds of things. But my first article for me was not cyber, funny enough. And it was all about looking at the world of of virtual reality and this philosophical idea that the true reality would become more sought after
Yeah.
than the virtual world that I feel we're going to end up in. That's going to be
Yeah.
a common denominator world that's going to be boring. But
Well,
I digress. But anyways, that was my first real article.
But yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. You have articles that are kind of like almost opposite of what you do or what you work that do really well. I mean, I wrote one on recruiting, and it was just a rant about how the whole recruiting process was screwed up. And when I posted it on LinkedIn, it exploded, to the point to where I had to go ahead and shut down comments because I had like almost 2 million people over, a month period had jumped on that thing. And it was just cruel. Like I'd say 95% negative. People were not happy with the whole recruiting process, and this was back in like 2018, 2019. I don't think it's gotten any better since then. But it was just like, and it was something totally outside of what I normally talk about, in cyber. And I have found some skills talking about soft skills, just talking about things that you need to do, how to be able to work with people and how to be able to, or how to troubleshoot and solve problems. Not technical at all, but it's more of how you just, work with other carbon-based life forms. And I find some of those articles actually work really well, because people are always trying to figure out, where do I fit? How can I do good? How do I work with this person? How do I solve this problem?
Yeah. I think as humans, we're hungry for a lot of things, not just technology. Certainly as cyber professionals, we like the tech.
Oh yeah.
And some of us, like me, I like the process, but ultimately we're humans. We have to work with each other. And so understanding that too, and how we tick and how we stay safe and healthy. I know we talked about that, and Rick's talked about that a lot as well.
Oh yeah.
So huge part of it. So I'm glad to hear that you enjoy those concepts too, those topics. So Gary, fabulous chatting with you. I have tons of things on my mind. I think directions we could go, but I think we'll leave it here. I'm going to link to your article on LinkedIn. That was the inspiration for this. So people can read through that and pick up more nuggets from that particular piece. And of course, I would encourage everybody to let's boost it up above 200,000. I'm honored to be one of those, by the way. But more people follow you and engage with your content there, that would be fantastic. And if they get a chance to visit you at a conference, that's a treat as well. So hopefully folks get to do that, and hopefully I get to see you at one soon.
Yeah, we definitely need to be able to get together and talk more.
I'm going to go right back to the beginning. Fish tacos and beer. I was set right then. I've had them in San Diego and Newport and Laguna, and productivity soars when you have fish tacos and beer. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely come up with a lot of ideas.
Exactly. All right, Gary. Well, thanks a million for joining me again. I'm thrilled to have you back on the show, and thanks everybody for listening and watching, and hopefully you enjoy this conversation and everything that Gary does. And of course, please share, subscribe, and do so for Gary. And stay tuned for more in here on Redefining Cybersecurity here on ITSPmagazine. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. If you learned something new and this story made you think, then share ITSP Magazine with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our columns. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.